I'm Paul, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is my professor, Dr. Larry Arnn, on the separation of church and state.
America's founders believed in the separation of church and state, in that the country was not to have an official religion or an official sect. But that did not mean that government was to be hostile to religion, or even indifferent to religion, as many today argue. In fact, America's founding document, the Declaration of Independence, includes both a reference to God as the author of the laws of nature and a confident assertion that human beings are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Far from being hostile or indifferent to religion, America's founders understood the theology of the Declaration to be an essential part of the education of citizens.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.org.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians.
You got a business. You didn't build that.
A team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying Kath was stupid, bro.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sacco as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on shrmedia.com.
Probably about 20,000 communists over the river.
We can hold a bridge. We can defend Doha.
We will fight in Doha, and we will die in Doha.
This is not a prison. This is a re-education camp.
The communists always try to break us.
Bring teachers here to teach you proper communist way to live. Still show no gratitude. Get up!
But they will never break me.
Ride the Thunder, coming soon to a theater near you. For more information, visit ridethethundermovie.com.
Good afternoon, Philadelphia and all over the world. You're listening to The Edge of Liberty, 1360 AM WNJC in Philadelphia, on the internet, WNJCradio.com, part of the Conservative Commandos radio network, as well as SHRmedia.com. I am coming to you live from the Time for a Hero studio. Thank you so much for joining me. I want to get right into it. We know about this horrific shooting that happened in South Carolina last evening, and on the phone with us right now is the editor-in-chief of Pundit Press, Dan Butcher. Dan, a lot's happened in the last 30 minutes, so let's get caught up to speed and then talk a little bit about the shooter.
Well, yeah, thanks, Sean, for letting me come on to discuss the shooting. Just to get everybody caught up, Dylan Roof, the 21-year-old suspect in this shooting, has been arrested. He was arrested in Shelby, North Carolina, which is over 240 miles northwest from the crime scene. Richland County Sheriff Leon Lott confirmed that Roof has been taken into custody alive. Of course, Roof is accused of fatally shooting 9 people at the Emmanuel AME Church on Wednesday night in South Carolina. Here's what we know so far. Of the 9 victims, all were killed. 6 were female, 3 are male. A criminal history report shows that Roof was known to police. He was arrested in, excuse me, I'm a little choked up. He was arrested in Lexington County on February 28th of this year on a controlled substance charge, and then again on April 26th on a trespassing charge. Neither one of those cases had been adjudicated. Let's see. Charleston Police Chief Greg Mullen has deemed the shooting a hate crime. The Department of Justice Civil Rights Division has opened a hate crime investigation into the shooting. Roof spent about an hour inside the church attending a regular Wednesday night prayer meeting before he started shooting. Roof allowed one woman to escape to explain to authorities what transpired. A young child did survive the shooting by playing dead, and she followed the instructions of her grandmother. And that's what saved her life. Let's see. It's kind of going down here. The shooting victims at Charleston's Emmanuel AME Church were killed because they were black. Charleston's police spokesman Charles Francis told CNN's Nick Valencia on Thursday. Francis said this after Valencia asked him what is leading authorities to investigate the shooting as a hate crime. There were a total of 13 people in the church when the shooting happened. The shooter, the 9 people who were killed, and 3 survivors. South Carolina's State Senator Larry Grooms, who was briefed by law enforcement, told CNN 2 of the survivors were not harmed. Now, here, a very interesting today, and I was talking to a good friend of ours, Annie Ubellis, who lives in South Carolina. Among the dead was the church pastor and state senator Clemente Pinckney, who was 41. He had been a pastor since he was 18 years old. Pinckney was the youngest African-American elected to the South Carolina legislature when he won office in 1996 at age 23 and had been a state senator since 2000. He actually was Annie's state senator there in South Carolina. The other victims have not immediately been identified. Now, Annie Ubellis did tell me this about Pinckney. She said that even though she didn't agree with him everything politically, because he was a Democrat, she did greatly admire him because he always had his constituents at heart. Didn't matter if you were a Republican, if you were a Democrat, independent, or whatever. His door was always open for the constituents, to the people in the community. He was very well liked. So certainly while we do not yet know all of the details, we do know that we will never understand what motivated anyone to enter one of our places of worship and take the life of another. Please join us in lifting up the victims and their families with our love and prayers. U.S. Senator Tim Scott posted a series of Twitter messages about the tragedy. He said, "My heart is breaking for Charleston and South Carolina tonight." And of course, I do believe right now, as we were coming to the air, the new Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, has already spoken on the shooting. President Obama was scheduled to go on at 11:45 Eastern time. We were still waiting for him to make his statement. I don't know if he's made it yet because I've been on the air with you. But that's kind of where we stand right now, Sean, on the details of the shooting.
Yeah, and I'm going to try to actually, if I can get it to patch through, I have the screen up waiting for the president to speak as well. Couple things I want to ask, Dan, and I don't know if you know yet. First of all, was he a regular member of this church?
No.
Okay, so he showed up.
There's no indication. You have to remember, this particular church is a historical African American church.
Yes.
It was at the center of the civil rights movement. So, no, we do not know why he targeted this church, why he was at this particular prayer meeting on this Wednesday night. One of the good things about him being taken alive is maybe we will actually get some answers this time.
Yeah, well, I have a feeling it's going to be a lot like the Colorado shooter. I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of missed indicators or issues with this Dylan Storm roof. And I haven't been able to dig into his social media. I'm sure there's going to be some indicators on there if he is active on social media. A horrific tragedy. I say it anytime you walk into anyone's place of worship and do something so horrific, there's a special level of hell that you're going to end up in. But this one, it's even more tragic. I guess it's really hard to gauge it being more tragic than other losses of life. But this is a shock the conscience type event, even more so than some of the other shootings we've had in the past because of where it transpired. Not only was it a historical church that was very, very pertinent in during the civil rights movement, but it was a Bible study in general. We've talked about incidents like this that have almost transpired or have transpired. This is obviously the worst mass shooting at a church this country has seen. And obviously my thoughts and prayers go with the family. But now is going to be the time to dig into what made this lunatic tick. I don't, and I will never be able to comprehend why this seemed like an acceptable act to this young man. And I'll tell you right now, there's a lot of indicators right up front. The fact that he didn't just barge in and start shooting, and he actually sat in on the Bible study for an hour, it is extremely troubling. That alone is one of the most troubling things, because he literally, most random acts or acts of lunacy, when they involve planning to that level, and there was obviously a plan this young man had, he went in and he sat and essentially prayed with his victims, and I don't know if he actually prayed, but his victims were praying during Bible study before he executed them. And that is extremely troubling.
Yeah, Sean, I'll point this out. There may very well turn out to be a racist element to this, but I did some searching on, of course, investigating, looking on social media. Ruth is 5'9", 120 pounds. I came across another Facebook page, another gentleman that's also named Dylan Roof. And the only difference this is the spelling of the names. This Dylan only has one N in his name. And of course, he lives in South Carolina as well. Of course, his Facebook page was being inundated, with questions. And he put up a post saying, hey, you know what? I'm not this Dylan Roof. I know who this guy is, but I'm not him. I've been confused with him before, and then reading down some of the posts in here saying, hey, you know what? We went to high school with this guy. He's a kind of a strange bird. So the similarities between the way that this shooting was carried out, and the way the Colorado movie theater shooting was carried out are too eerie, Sean. There's a lot of things that coincide with one another here, and are very similar in the way they were carried out. The people that carried out the attacks are very similar and look like they have very similar backgrounds. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out with this, because once again, you have to stop and think. He purposely went in, sat with the members of the church, basically reading the Bible, praying with them, and then shot most of them to death. So, this is certainly a young man that, even if there is a racist undertone to this is certainly a young man that, he probably, we're going to find out, has some very, very serious mental issues.
Yeah, and much like the Colorado shooter who said that he went specifically late at night so there'd be a minimal amount of children that would be harmed.
Right.
This guy allowed a woman to flee. And one of the questions in the chat room, he is a white male, and that may play a role in this. But he allowed somebody to flee to tell his story. That alone is a frightening thought. The fact that, and that tells you this wasn't a rage, this wasn't a heat of the moment, this wasn't hey, I just drive down the street and lost my job and everything. And it's not one of those horrific incidents. There was planning involved. There was malice. There was a forethought. He targeted these people for whatever reason, and it's not justified. I don't care how many times we talk about this. But he targeted unarmed, innocent civilians, women, children, and men. He executed all but one, and then for the intent of being able to tell his story, released her. That is the complete act of a psychopath. And I know probably it's going to end up being after the break. We're going to talk about the left reaction, all this other stuff. But have they talked about what weapon has been used? Yeah, I'm assuming it's a pistol, because he was able to hide it for the entirety of the hour that he was in there.
Yeah, I got a couple of points to make. Yes, we do know that he did receive a handgun from a family member, so we do know that he did own and possess a handgun. We do not know the weapon that was used in the shooting yet. The police have not released that information. I'm sure we will get that information later today. But we do know that he did have a handgun of some sort that he did have in his possession that was his, so we do know that. Sean, I also want to bring this up, and this is very telling as well, because you and I were both, we were texting back and forth. And one very unique thing about this case, you and I were both very surprised that they found him alive. I'll be honest with you, I was expecting that that he would probably get into some type of standoff with this, and he would either take his own life, or he would pull one of the suicide by cop stunts or something like that. But the fact that they were able to take him alive without any incident whatsoever is very telling, because that is the exact situation that we had in
Colorado.
In Colorado, they
yes.
were able to take him alive, without any resistance, basically.
And Dan, too, one of the things that really scares me, listen, and I said to you, I was kind of under the assumption he would take the coward's route out.
Right.
I did not think that when he had armed law enforcement pursuing him, just on the act alone, I did not think that he would fight back. So I figured he would end it before that interaction took place. But now that we know he's taken into custody, the Colorado shooting becomes so prominent, like you said, because has this guy posted sympathetic statements about the Colorado shooting? Home be booby-trapped like the Aurora, Colorado shooter was.
Matter of fact, on social media, his Facebook page is completely locked down. The only information you can get from his Facebook page was a profile picture that shows him in a leather jacket with some patches on it, and with the same haircut that he has. You see him
that prominent bowl cut.
Right.
But it'll be interesting to see as this goes on what his sympathies were and where they lied. And I have a feeling that Colorado will begin to play a role in this more and more, including the missed mental illness indicators by either family members, loved ones, etc. Because much like in Colorado, who you had trained professionals missing or not following through, and I don't care what anyone says, the guy who pulled the trigger committed the act, but there was a systemic failure with the psychologist that he was working with in Colorado that could have prevented this if they did their job, in my humble opinion. And it's going to be curious to me, just almost like Sandy Hook and almost like in Colorado, if people knew something was coming and everybody was afraid to say something. And that's the part that scares me in a lot of different ways, because we're going to get into the 2A thing, I'm sure, after the break, because everyone's screaming about it already. But this guy was going to commit a horrific act, in my opinion, just like Colorado, just like the Oklahoma City bombing. It's going to be done one way or the other. The question is who knew it may happen, or who had that indicator? Especially it's going to be interesting to see, with the narcotics arrest in April, and then the trespassing. It'd be interesting to see if that was at a church or not. A couple other things, but were things said that some people now are going, oh, I should have said this to law enforcement or to whoever?
Sean, I'll point this out real quick. So far, this, Dylann Roof does not fit the profile of what we've seen in the past, as far as people that have carried out horrific racial crimes. This he doesn't fit the pro. He's obviously not a skinhead. He doesn't fit the profile of being a member of the Ku Klux Klan or anything like that. But then again, we don't know the full story. He may very well have some very racial undertones
that he kept to himself.
To why he did this.
Yeah.
But bottom line is, he fits so far. He fits the exact same profile that we have seen in the Colorado shooting, Sandy Hook, and now this shooting. He is fitting that type of profile where he's looking like, you know what, this may have been an individual that had unfortunately had a very rough childhood, and that coupled in with some mental issues and stuff like that. He's fitting that profile so far, not the profile of a mass racist killer.
Right, and I said before, I would probably bet dollars to donuts that race may have contributed to this.
Right.
That my only thing that would shy me away from that, from going all in on that theory, is the fact that he sat and prayed for an hour.
Yes.
And I almost wonder if this isn't going to be on a different level than just race. And it could be a racially motivated, 100%. I don't know yet. But that alone tells me that there was something else going on that wasn't just racial motivation. You don't do that. You don't go and sit with and pray with people that you're going to murder because their skin is a different tone. It just doesn't fit any profile I have ever read or seen before.
He could have very well been purposely targeting Christians as well,
right,
or any religious organization. So, I mean, in all honesty, this may have been the first church he picked out. We just don't know. There's so much stuff we don't know. There's so much stuff we're not going to know for days to come. So, just to let the listeners know, we presented the facts that we did know so far. So right now, we're speculating, throwing some theories out there, using some past incidents to kind of fit some pieces together to kind of understand this crime. But bottom line is crimes like this, no matter what the motivation is, are so hard to comprehend, so hard to understand what makes a person's mind do this. Whether it's racially motivated or it's an anti-Christian bias, or it's a lot easier for us to understand. Well, you know what? This person was mentally unstable. Now, if it turns out that he was not mentally unstable and he was just a hate-filled racial lunatic, well, then we've got a whole nother situation on our hands, Sean.
Well, and I agree, and I'm up against the break, so I'm going to close out with this. One of the things I want to see is if he had writings, what his motivational was, because if it was to alter a political field or a social field, and he specifically created this act to scare people, then I think he should be charged with terrorism, no different than Tsarnaev. Because, and I think you jump over or you add that in, if it's a hate crime, then yeah, they've already opened a hate crime investigation, and they absolutely should. There's zero reason why they shouldn't view that avenue, based on my opinion. But his motivation, I think you can amount, and it could amount to terror if we see what his true motivation is, which at that case, he should be tried and charged with terror, and he should be executed, in my opinion. I mean, honestly, in my personal opinion, he should be executed anyhow if he's found guilty, because this is such a horrific act that I'm one of those people that I don't believe he should be allowed to walk another day. But that's just merely my emotions talking versus the reality. Let me take a quick break, Dan. We come back. The thing that I knew when I read this last night while we were in air with Sackheads is already starting. Back in a few minutes here on the Edge of Liberty, 1360 AM WNJC in Philadelphia.
America's founders believed in the separation of church and state, in that the country was not to have an official religion or an official sect. But that did not mean that government was to be hostile to religion, or even indifferent to religion, as many today argue. In fact, America's founding document, the Declaration of Independence, includes both a reference to God as the author of the laws of nature and a confident assertion that human beings are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Far from being hostile or indifferent to religion, America's founders understood the theology of the Declaration to be an essential part of the education of citizens.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.org.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians,
You got a business. That you didn't build that.
a team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean,
Dude, I'm not saying calf for the stupid pro.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sacco as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show.
There's something particularly
every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on shrmedia.com.
Probably about 20,000 communists over the river.
We can hold a bridge. We can defend Dongha.
We will fight in Dongha, and we will die in Dongha.
This is not a prison. This is the re-education camp.
The communists always try to break us.
Bring teachers here to teach you proper communist way to live. Still show no gratitude. Get up!
But they will never break me.
Ride the Thunder, coming soon to a theater near you. For more information, visit ridethethundermovie.com.
We're back on the Edge of Liberty, 1360 AM WNJC in Philadelphia. The president is speaking right now about the South Carolina incident, and if you just give me a quick second, I'm going to see if I can patch him in. Dan, I don't know if you're following, if you can kind of catch us up on what he said so far.
I am not following what the president said, Sean, but Sean, let me bring this up real quick. I blew up the picture of Dylan Roof in the jacket that he's wearing in the Facebook picture. The flags, and I recognize these flags. The flags that are on the jacket are flags from South Africa and Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe, and the flags are apartheid era flags. I thought I'd seen those before, but that is what those are, Sean. And I will verify that's what those flags are on there. Also, we've now had some pictures come up of Roof sitting on the roof of his car with his license plates on his car had a Confederate flag on them. His father gave him a .45 caliber pistol for his birthday. A gentleman by the name of John Mullins, who went to high school with him, said that he remembered Roof as being kind of wild. He used a lot of drugs heavily. It was obviously harder than marijuana. He was like a pill popper, from what I understand, like Xanax and stuff like that. The school he went to had a good mix of black and white students. Roof did kind of have a reputation for spouting racist messages, according to this one guy. Go ahead.
I get the president. I just want to listen in, and then we can pick that up on the other side.
He said they lived meaningful lives, and they died nobly. They say to each of us, Dr. King said, black and white alike, that we must substitute courage for caution. They say to us that we must be concerned not merely with who murdered them, but about the system, the way of life, the philosophy which produced the murderers. Their death says to us that we must work passionately and unrelentingly for the realization of the American dream. And if one will hold on, he will discover that God walks with him, and that God is able to lift you from the fatigue of despair to the buoyancy of hope, and transform dark and desolate valleys into sunlit paths of inner peace. Reverend Pigney and his congregation understood that spirit. Their Christian faith compelled them to reach out not just to members of their congregation, or to members of their own communities, but to all in need. They opened their doors to strangers who might enter a church in search of healing or redemption. Mother Emanuel Church and its congregation have risen before, from flames, from an earthquake, from other dark times, to give hope to generations of Charlestonians, and with our prayers and our love and the buoyancy of hope, it will rise again now as a place of peace. Thank you.
What would you do differently on gun control?
President Obama speaking, flanked by Vice President Biden about the South Carolina shooting. Dan, before we jump to the president, we were talking about the patches, and I kind of want to get back into that again because, and then move on because there are more pictures that are coming out about some other things. But I think this kind of deserves to stand together, this whole conversation. So the picture of him with his patches, tell us again about the patches.
Okay, what those flags are, the flags on the which, if you look, they're on the right side. I can't make out there's on the left side of his jacket. There's something that's embroidered on the jacket. So
I'm trying to see if I can blow that up now.
On the right side of his jacket are two flags, and those two flags are from the apartheid era of South Africa and Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe. So that may have some significance there. Is some of his beliefs. Of course, now one of the pictures now that we're getting is, of course, Roof sitting on the top of his car, and the license plates on his car have a Confederate flag. So look for something very big to be made out of that.
Of course,
we do know now that his father gave him a .45 caliber pistol for his birthday. Now, I want to get back to this one gentleman that went to high school with him, John Mullins. John Mullins confirmed that Roof was a heavy drug user. He also was not. We were kind of speculating that he might have been an outcast or something like that, but he was not one of the outcasts in school. He wasn't a lot of people. He was kind of nondescript. A lot of people didn't know him, but some people did know him. So, but he wasn't necessarily a outcast. He did have a reputation for making racist jokes. Mullins said, I never heard him say anything but but he said that kind of Southern pride, I guess some would say, strong. He made a lot of racist jokes, but you don't really take them seriously like that. You don't really think of it like that. So and that's what he had to say. Here's another thing that was something that's very interesting. If you look at his Facebook page, the mix of friends, there's just under 100 friends, but there is a mix of white and black friends on his Facebook page. So he did have, obviously, white and black friends. And this is a non-confirmed quote that has just come out. This is being quoted from the cousin of the church's pastor, who said one of the told this individual that Roof said before he started shooting everybody, I have to do it. You're raping our women and you're taking over the country. You have to go. That is unconfirmed. And so I'll see if I can get to that specific quote and confirm if Roof did indeed say that before he started shooting everybody in the church.
Well, and if it's so, I mean, it's very, very telling. Obviously, we talk about the flags. We can talk about the Confederate flag. We can talk about, but the fact that he made these jokes in high school and maybe beyond. I'm sure at the time they were just written off as immature, crude jokes.
Right.
But again, you start looking into the past now, and just based on some of the information we have, and you start to seek a motivation, it sounds like the motivation is starting to form up. Those patches are very, very telling. And thank you for pointing that out, because I saw the patches and I never really looked too far into them. So that's very, very telling. If he said that quote, if I recall, and maybe I'm wrong, Dan, the Colorado shooter made an announcement before he started shooting as well, and I forget exactly what it was, but I seem to recall that he made an announcement as well. It really gives you the understanding of how much premeditation was in this.
Right. I'll point another thing out, Sean. And I just noticed this, too, that the symbol, and I need to blow these pictures up a little bit more to see, but in the T-shirt that he was wearing, the long-sleeve T-shirt, sweatshirt that he was wearing, seems to have, I said there was a logo embroidered on the jacket. the logo that's embroidered on this sweatshirt that he's wearing right before he committed the crime looks very similar. So I'm trying to figure out what that is.
And if it's symbolic whatsoever.
Yeah, I can't tell what it is. It may be significant, it may not, but I can't quite tell. I can't quite tell what that is. But Sean, I'm also going to point this out, and I know you're going to want to get into this too. But obviously, if this is the case, you're going to start seeing, Salon.com has already come out with an article, saying that basically that. That white America is to blame and white privilege is to blame for this shooting. But yet, once again, these type of shootings are so rare, even when racially motivated, are so rare. But yet, our friends on the liberal left continue to ignore the very radical elements among their own mix, which is like the Black Panthers or the Nation of Islam that are opening, calling for revolution in our country today.
Yeah.
And then once again forgetting about the black on black crime. How many African Americans were killed in Chicago, were killed in Baltimore, St. Louis this past weekend? How many more are going to be killed this coming up weekend?
Well, the reality is they're going to hijack this situation.
Exactly.
Because one of the biggest problems, and I've talked about this on SACKETS, I've talked about it on this show, mental illness is so vastly ignored in this country, and how we deal with it is so just swept under the table. Much like Aurora, Colorado, much like we see every day on our streets, a lot of these people who have been released, and I said this on SACKETS, and people were just mortified they would dare say it, but when California and a lot of other states closed the mental health hospitals, the state-run hospitals, where mental illness people were brought and cared for because they couldn't care for themselves. And then it was actually President Reagan and then Governor Reagan who closed all of them and started to release people under this idea of, well, if they self-medicate, if there's somebody to look in on them here and there, they will be able to integrate back into society. It's a tremendously failed experiment, and this is something I say all the time, you're trusting people with mental illness to take medicine to keep them from getting mentally ill. I know people that forget to take medicine that will save their lives every single day. That have zero mental issues, So when you start looking at mental illness in this country, and I'm not even giving this guy the bow out yet to say that he was mentally ill, because I have a serious issue with how we deal with mental illness and crimes in this country as well. But just mental illness alone is vastly underdealt with in this country, and all these other big, sexy, quote unquote, sexy issues get pushed to the front. So, just like Colorado, I don't believe that he was, quote unquote, mentally ill per the law. I think anyone that executes another person or murders another person, yeah, you're mentally ill. There's something seriously wrong with you, in my opinion. But, the criminality aspect of mentally ill, we don't have guilty by mental illness, and then, a lot of times it's, he's mentally ill, so he doesn't get charged, and in 20 years he can get out and go from there. So that is a problem I have. Yes, mental illness is an issue, but we need to address how we deal with it in this country, because in a case like this, or in a case like Aurora, and even Timothy McVeigh to a point, it plays a point. Of course these people are mentally ill. There's no question in anyone's mind. But what are we going to do to deal with that mental illness on the streets?
Yeah, exactly. And Sean, I think it's going to be interesting also to see what the toxicology reports are.
Yes.
Was he high when they arrested him? Just how out of it was he when they arrested him, or was he fully coherent? A lot of that's going to come into play as well. It would not surprise me if we see a combination of drug use. Once again, we're just speculating at this point if he's a racist or not, if some racist tendencies played into this, if some mental illness played into this, if it's a combination of everything. Was he delusional? There's a lot of things that are going to play into this, because once again we have to point out, because right now I'm seeing Twitter is being lit up by the leftists, and the liberal blogs are absolutely going nuts nuts, stating how, how extreme right-wing extremists are the biggest threat to the country today.
Yes.
And so they're already calling him an extreme right-wing extremist,
well,
how dangerous they are. And, of course, that has been fueled by the Obama administration and et cetera. And I think we're going to find that's furthest from the case, because this guy definitely doesn't look like he has any affiliations, although, we're still kind of, getting in and investigating that. So we'll see if he does have some affiliations somewhere.
Well,
but,
let's...
bottom line... Oh, go ahead, Sean. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine, because I want to talk about that, and I want to talk about his license plate, and I want to talk about the left reaction. Let's take a quick break, and we come back. Right. We're going to rip that apart, because there's going to be some unfortunate truths that the left are going to have to deal with this. We'll be back here on 1360 AM WNJC in Philadelphia. This is The Edge of Liberty. I'm your host, Sean Lewis. Dan Butcher joins us on the line just after the break.
Hello, I'm Paul, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is my professor, Dr. Larry Arnn, on the separation of church and state.
America's founders believed in the separation of church and state, in that the country was not to have an official religion or an official sect. But that did not mean that government was to be hostile to religion, or even indifferent to religion, as many today argue. In fact, America's founding document, the Declaration of Independence, includes both a reference to God as the author of the laws of nature and a confident assertion that human beings are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Far from being hostile or indifferent to religion, America's founders understood the theology of the Declaration to be an essential part of the education of citizens.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.org.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians,
You got a business. You didn't build that.
a team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying calf for the stupid promo.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sacco as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on SHRmedia.com.
Probably about 20,000 communists over the river.
We can hold a bridge. We can defend Doha.
We will fight in Doha, and we will die in Doha.
This is not a prison. This is the re-education camp.
The communists always try to break us.
Bring teachers here to teach you proper communist way to live. Still show no gratitude. Get up!
But they will never break me.
Ride the Thunder, coming soon to a theater near you. For more information, visit ridethethundermovie.com.
And we are back here on the Edge of Liberty, 1360 AM WNJC in Philadelphia, all over the world on the internet, WNJCradio.com, part of the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, and part of the SHR Media Network as well. On the phone with us, the editor-in-chief, Pundit Press. We're talking about the South Carolina church shooting, which I'll get back to in a second real quick. The House has passed the Obama trade bill. It's on its way to the Senate as we speak. I have a feeling Dan, when he does his Friday show for me tomorrow here on the Edge of Liberty, is going to have a lot more about that.
A bunch more about that.
Yeah.
Sean, let me start this with this, because I know this is going to absolutely set you off, and I want to do that on purpose, because I know you have a lot of good things to say about this, and this is what Salon.com had to say. They said, white. Let me emphasize this very clearly. White right-wing domestic terrorism is one of the greatest threats to public safety and security in post-9/11 United States of America. Such a plain-spoken fact is forgotten in mainstream American public discourse. Once again, white privilege is the power to be the ultimate individual, where one's actions actions and behavior rarely, if ever, reflects on the collective character of white people en masse. By comparison, black and brown Americans, Muslims, Arabs, and the other, more generally, are routinely subjected to group punishment and demonization. White Americans will not have to look in the mirror and ask, what does it feel like to be a problem? In the aftermath of reoccurring mass shootings and right-wing domestic terrorism, it is essentially that they start to practice such acts of introspection in the interest of the common good. White America must answer for the Charleston Church massacre. Sean, it's all yours, my friend.
Well, first of all, it's amazing to me how, and I say this all the time, just because one black person commits a robbery, does that to say that every black person is a robber? No. The same thing. Just because one white person commits a horrific act, you cannot have the same bigotry blanket thrown over that every single white person is either sympathetic or would do the same thing. That statement alone is so full of bigotry, it is not even funny. And let's be honest about a few things. I have, nor almost everybody I know, either people of color or not, have never once seen a horrific act committed on committed by a white person onto a person of color and said that's okay because they're just so and so, whatever race, religion, you pick it, you go. I think it's funny though that they used race on everything else except for when it came to Muslim. They used that religion specifically and not just black Christians as it was in this situation. So I think it's funny that the Muslim race gets a tip of a hat as being persecuted, but Christians not mentioned whatsoever. And finally, for less than, and I'll tell you right now, this story came out when we were on Sackhead, so it was less than 12 hours ago. For this idiot over at Salon, whoever wrote that article, to make the assumption that this person was a right-winger right off the bat is insane. And here is why. The Confederate flag was the symbol of the South rising during the Civil War and fighting. What people seem to forget, the KKK, the Confederates that were fighting against the North, etc., were Democrats. They were not right-wing, gun-toting Americans, as we love. They weren't the teabaggers. They weren't all this other things. And listen, Harry Reid made this okay when he called the Tea Party terrorists. I blame this all on Reid because once he called the Tea Party terrorists in a speech 5 or 6 years ago, it's becoming more and more okay to look at people who are conservative and on the right as a threat and as a terror. Meanwhile, I think it's very, very safe to say that the majority of the people on the right side of the fence when something like this has happened are the first ones to call for some sort of action on the individual that committed the crime. We love to throw this blanket response over everything. Look at Sandy Hook when the president marched the children of Sandy Hook that were there the day of the shooting onto the stage and essentially says, if you don't agree with me and my executive action on gun control, you hate children. We had the release yesterday of the report by the idiots who essentially said, well, people that own carry their guns privately or have no impact on crime all over the country, which is BS. We know it was BS. And it's the same thing of, well, if you carry a gun, you must hate children because, guns kill children. Well, if you say I can't carry a gun, you must hate children because what if I could use that weapon to defend one child? What if I could save one life? Listen, we go back to Timothy McVeigh, and I say this time and again. Timothy McVeigh was one of the worst homegrown terrorists this country has ever seen. He was the worst homegrown terrorist this country has ever seen. I am glad he died. I wished it was painful. I wished I could have been the one to push the button or pull the trigger, whatever you want to be. I absolutely am disgusted that anybody would make this political right off the bat. And it tells you very, very much where their motivation is. It has nothing to do with the people that perished in this horrific act last night. It has to do with pushing an agenda. And that is the final word on that. There's nothing else. You have proven it's about an agenda. There is no such thing as white privilege. As much as people love to throw that around. You know what? I've been working since I was 14 years old. I had 2 and 3 jobs almost my entire life to get what I am right now, and I am barely middle class. There was no white privilege. I had to fight and claw every single day to get there, and I still do it every single day. On top of this show, Sackheads and SHR Media, I still work 40 to 50 hours a week outside of that and try to be a parent and a husband all at once. Don't sit here and talk about any sort of privilege for anybody. We all have the opportunity to become who we want to be in this country. All you have to do is step up, look for that hand up, not the hand out, and stop blaming everybody else for the actions of certain individuals. Was that the response you were looking for?
Yeah, perfect. And now I'm gonna set you off some more.
Oh, goody, goody.
Let me. This is what, in case, because we missed most of what President Obama had to say. Here are two very key aspects of President Obama's remarks. He said, "I've had to make statements like this too many times. At some point, we as a country will have to reckon with the fact that this type of mass violence does not happen in other developed countries."
Bull.
Okay. And second of all, he says, it is in our power to do something about it. I say that recognizing the politics in this town, which he is talking about Washington, D.C., foreclose a lot of those avenues right now, but it would be wrong for us not to acknowledge it. That is, in my opinion, a slight hint that we need to go to full-blown gun control in our country, which is the liberal leftist wet dream other than Obamacare.
Well, you know, and I say this all the time. I have a buddy of mine who has a tendency to be a little bit left of center, not completely, but he says it all the time: is you can't put it back in the bowl, and meaning excrement. Once it's out, it's out. If we could go back to when the Chinese invented gunpowder and stopped them from doing it, it's a different conversation. And by the way, it wasn't America that invented guns. But reality is what it is. You could right now pass total gun control and say, everybody turn in their guns tomorrow by law. I'm not saying I want this, but I'm saying if they ever did this. And every single law-abiding citizen, as much as we would fight in the courts and all this other stuff, would not have guns, and every criminal, including this idiot, Dylan Storm Roof, would still have a gun. Or if these guns were never invented, say guns never happened, people still died en masse prior to weapons being used. The first mass killing in this country was completed by a Native American with a tomahawk at a school in Delaware, and I think it was 1720-something, in which I think it was 12 children and a teacher were murdered. The gun, I say it all the time, it's just a tool. It's no different than a hammer. It's when it's put into the hands of criminals, it's used for evil. And here's a little hint. With all the weapons in the world and all the porous borders we have, we could throw every single gun we own into a giant vat tomorrow, and there would be thousands of them coming in en masse. All you would do is the drug trade in Mexico would change to a gun trade, and it would be flooding, and it would be worse than ever. Proof point. This guy did not fight when the police showed up. Why? Because they were armed. He walked into a room full of unarmed people and executed them. Why didn't he fight when the police got there? Well, either he's a complete psychopath that wanted to be able to go in front of the media and the notoriety, and he wanted that and become some sort of martyr for his twisted cause, or he knew, and he's a giant coward, which I think we can all agree with at this point, he knew that he wouldn't stand a chance. So, what did he do? He put down his gun and he walked out. And that's what happens when you're met with resistance. And look, we've seen time and again stories come out of people who are about to be attacked and killed that have pulled out a gun and have ended it before a shot was even fired. Sometimes it's a shot's fired. Sometimes, the perpetrator is killed. Heck, sometimes even the victim is killed. But the point is you can't keep blaming an inanimate object for the action of the sick, twisted, and insane. You need to blame the sick, twisted, and insane. They are the ones who need, and I feel like I'm talking about Sandy Hook and Aurora all over again. The people that commit the acts are the problems, not the tools they use. Timothy McVeigh did not use a gun at all to kill all of those people in Oklahoma City. You've had people who get angry in a car and drive into 20, 30 people at the same time. The sick, the twisted, and insane will find a way to commit horrific acts because that is their little twisted goal. And I think the average person cannot even understand that possibility. They think, oh, well, if you take the gun away, he'll lose his motivation. No. If you take the gun away, he'll just find a different way to do it. And I think for normal people that don't kind of read in and follow this stuff every day, they don't believe that because guns, it's so easy to go after guns. But I'll tell you right now, after 9/11, after 9/11 and after Timothy McVeigh, one of the biggest things that our government did was put out this false narrative of, oh, well, in order to keep ANFO, diesel fuel, and a couple other things from falling into the wrong hands by large amounts, we're going to have this new registry. So if you buy X amount of fertilizer over this amount of pounds, it'll be written down in a book somewhere. That's all well and good. That way, after the fact, we know where they bought it, but it doesn't stop people from doing it. You could drive around to 15 different fertilizer places and get just as much fertilizer, ANFO, and diesel fuel as you need to do it again. The reality is the people who are going to do it are going to do it one way or another. And absolutely, Dave in the chat room just pulled it out. All the Chinese people, I think it was 21 that were killed in a Muslim attack with knives in China the last 6 months. We've seen the British military soldier that was beheaded in public in London. People are going to commit these crimes, and a lot of times law enforcement is not going to be there fast enough to stop it. Just like in Britain, hey, listen, most of the British cops now have guns. That guy was attacked, the call went out, and his head was still chopped off. Well, they didn't kill 9, or they didn't kill 20, or they didn't kill 21, not yet. But if they get enough of them, they will. And I would much rather take my chances with my pistol at my side or whatever I choose to carry on me versus waiting for the police to show up, because in a lot of big cities, that could be 15 or 20 minutes.
You know, Sean, look, here's the money quote from Barack Obama today, and people are already aware that that we've had some U.S. senators and U.S. congressmen introduce new gun control regulations specifically targeting handguns, to where they want you to go into your local law enforcement office, with a photo ID, get fingerprinted, background check. You have to adhere to all of the regulations with the Brady Bill, all that stuff, and look for them to really use this to push gun control and doing away with the Second Amendment in general. And here is the money quote from Barack Obama. We don't have all the facts, but once again, there were some people who wanted to inflict harm, had no trouble getting their hands on a gun.
Yeah, Timothy McVeigh had no problem getting his hand on a giant bomb that killed hundreds of people. So don't start doing that. And that shows his motivation. And you know what? Rahm Emanuel must be high-fiving himself right now. Never, ever, ever let a tragedy go to waste. And that's exactly what's going to happen. And, Dan, I saw the first anti-gun. I saw 2 things last night. One of them is an anti-gun thing. Oh, another white guy with a gun kills a whole bunch of black people. That was one of the things I saw on Twitter. And the other one I saw on Twitter was, which just drove me crazy, was somebody saying, how is it that if God protects his children, this could happen in a church? Where are you, God, now? I'm an atheist. And I said, why does that even matter right now? First of all, we can have that argument on a different day, but the reality is what it is. If these people were in a cafeteria or a church or anywhere else, the simple fact of the matter is you cannot stop the mentally insane criminal from committing this act unless there is some sort of defensive setup ready to go. Look at Garland, Texas.
Exactly. Once again, this is just another, and I know we only got a couple of minutes, so I'll do this 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
in this particular case, no matter what the circumstances were, if Dylan Roof was high on drugs, if he was a racist, we don't know. He may have had some terrorist background in him. We don't know, but there was something that motivated him to do this crime. Just like there is the motivations behind the radical Islamists for the jihads they're carrying on and the mass terror attacks. Just like the motivation that we're seeing from the Black Panthers and the and Calypso Louie's Nation of Islam wanting to basically overthrow the government today. They're all radical elements, whether it's too far to the left, too far to the right, what have you. But in this case, once again, I think we're going to see a combination of some mental illness mixed in with maybe some racism and some drug abuse, Sean.
I agree. And like I said, if the paperwork is there, if they can prove it, I hope they charge him with terror. And I truly hope he's put to death if convicted. Dan, that's it. I got to go. Dr. Arnn speaking. Listen to Dan right here on the Edge of Liberty tomorrow at 12 in the East, 9 in the West, 1360 AM WNJC Philadelphia. Thank you, sir.
You bet. Thanks a lot, Sean.
Folks, I'm out of here. I'll talk to you Monday. Stay with SHR Media and Pundit Press for all the updates on the news this weekend. Thank you for hanging out. I will talk to you soon.
To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.org.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians,
You got a business. That you didn't build that.
a team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying half of the stupid promo.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Saku as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on SHRmedia.com.
Probably about 20,000 communists over the river.
We can hold a bridge. We can defend Doha.
We will fight in Doha, and we will die in Doha.
This is not a prison. This is the re-education camp.
The communists always try to break us.
Bring teachers here to teach you proper communist way to live. Still show no gratitude. Get up!
But they will never break me.
Ride the Thunder, coming soon to a theater near you. For more information, visit ridethethundermovie.com.